Let's talk about regression testing. Um, Regression testing is a phase we've been talking about around. It's kind of like a phase unlike other tests phases. Because regression testing is always retesting. The first time we test something, we're not regression. We don't know what's going on. Regression testing is saying we had a system, we knew what it did at that time. It might have worked, it might not have. Doesn't matter. And we're going to retest it. We're specifically testing the things that changed. So let's say we had a first release and 8 features worked and 2 features didn't. We definitely want to go test the 2 features because they were broken. We want to see if the test that once failed now passed. The question from regression testing standpoint is the 8 things that worked, is any of them now broken because of the fix we did over here? We made something better. Did we make something worse as well? If you don't regression test, then you might not find out till it's in a user's hand that you broke something. If you do regression test, you're spending time that you could be otherwise moving along. And so planning regression testing, it needs to be dependent on what changed, why are you regression testing, and what is the probability of finding an error in what you're regression testing. There's a trade-off inside of here, and that's what you will be paid for someday, is determining and solving these trade-offs. So the first step is to analyze the change. As you go into your test plan, where you build a regression test, you need to consider, why am I changing here? You might have to make up something in your project. You might not have a reason for it. So it could be a second or third test cycle. If you're doing sprints, sprint 3 might be testing sprints 1 and 2 results, just checking up on them. If you're doing a data warehousing project, perhaps you do a regression test because you imported a whole bunch of new data, or you had a schema change in your table, or you changed platforms, or you upgraded some software or something like that. So you need to have some analysis that something changed, but what's the expected impact of that? The easy answer is test everything every time, all the time, but it's not the cheap answer or necessarily the right answer. So regression testing basically is there as a warning sign. Something changed. Did it screw something up? And the more complicated your system is, the more likely you're not going to be able to analyze, certainly not with certainty, that something broke. And that's where particularly automated regression testing is really great, because you can often skip to the results and not have to go through all the analysis of, hey, everything should be working this way or that. So typically in regression testing, we don't need to test everything. We want to know, does the thing that we care about most still work? I don't know. I'm sorry here. I don't know that I was. Oops. Nope. I just did the wrong one here. I think I forgot in our conversation here. There we go. All right. So pretty slides. You should now be seeing the pretty slides. Sorry about that. So we need to know, does the components that we thought worked before still work? Are there certain aspects that might not work anymore? If you changed the structure of a database, you need to test all the database queries that touch that specific table or tables that changed. If you didn't touch a database, if you didn't do any problems with that, then you don't need to touch everything inside there. If a specific feature doesn't touch that part of the database, you don't need to retest that. And so analysis can help give you some key on what regression testing is. Ideally, we regression test as soon as we make the change. The longer we wait till later on, the more likely a bug might persist and not get caught. So if I don't regression test in unit testing, I really need to do it in SIT. I don't want to wait until performance testing or user acceptance testing later on to go back and change, check on things. So the idea is to do it quickly, because fundamentally testing is costly. If I find a bug much later, I've repeated a bunch of tests, then I'm wasting effort entirely on that. Each cycle of testing takes time, it takes money, it takes computer processing time. And so if we want to keep our schedule and budget, we want to be able to catch these errors as quickly as we can. And that's why we hire smart folks like you. You take these classes, you learn how to do this, and we're going to trust judgment that you're going to build up over time. You might not have it today, but you'll build up that judgment over time to figure out what's the cost of fixing errors versus the cost of finding them and doing the regression by doing the regression testing to begin with. You can figure out what's the minimal cost of quality. If you did a regression test to check every single error message that you can only generate by unplugging wires in the back of the computer, and you make some code changes that doesn't deal with that error handling code, don't run the test again. It's probably going to work, and how often are the computers going to get the plugs going to get unplugged anyway? So we knew it worked at some point. It's probably fine. Heck, we're at a deadline. Maybe we'll check that after we finish the deadline while we're waiting around, for the next set of testing or something like that. Because remember, just because you don't test something at a certain point in time doesn't mean you can't check it out later on. Testing is also just about being aware of what works and whatnot. And as I said before, automation helps. The more you can automate things, the more likely you can, retest something with lower cost. It doesn't mean you magically can test everything every time, but certainly it can let you schedule stuff without necessarily the expense of having people sit down and do it for long periods of time. It just depends on how quickly your automated tests run.